Hey guys, welcome back to Marketing on the Rocks, and I'm dressing some mod here.
How's it going, guys?
So this week I am drinking Monkey Shoulder. This is the first time I've had this, so I'm very excited to try it. What are you drinking, Samad?
I am. Ooh, I don't know if I'm sounding bad or not, but I am drinking John Bar.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, little Scotch. I freaking forgot to get the rocks though. Oh no.
I got one. We're good.
All right, we're good. I'm gonna have it neat.
I do prefer a neat. I will
Yeah.
have to.
You should change your name to Marketing Neat. Neat marketing. I don't know.
How's your week been?
It's been good, man. I always like to bring up, especially with you, when you and I are chatting about like how it's always better to take back time, and I feel like this week's been at least more manageable. Once people understand that meetings are not necessary all the time. What are your thoughts?
I agree, yeah. And we were able to get a lot of heads down time this week that you and I always talk about. Because it's hard to have meetings and be able to actually get work done, especially when you're home. Everybody thinks you have time for all these meetings when you really don't.
Yeah. It's about mindset. I mean, if you have all these meetings, you basically end up staying up late trying to do all the work that you just talked about in the meetings.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cheers to, I don't know, less meetings and taking back time. I think that's really the true meaning of freedom.
Yeah, I agree. Cheers. Cool. So, is it good?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, this one was actually pretty good. First time trying it. So.
Yeah, same.
So this week, what we really want to talk about is, marketing nowadays is all about content.
Mm-hmm.
But one topic that I feel like people don't talk enough about is making sure that your content is accessible to, a lot of people. And this includes, people that might not, people that might be hard of hearing, older people, everything like that. So I know some might have a couple of things to say about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's definitely important to be inclusive. All of our social channels definitely try their hardest to at least help with that in one form or fashion. I mean, it's crazy. Like Facebook has AI generated transcripts now, so you can put your closed captions in. Google, I believe, or like definitely YouTube, which makes sense, does as well. But I don't know if you noticed this one piece or not. Like, have you been on Disney Plus or Netflix lately? And when you go into like captions, which in our household, with our family here, I always keep them running, kind of also to teach the little guy. Plus, so we don't have to like blast the surround sound all the time. Like, we're just doing other things. Makes sense. But have you noticed that there's like CC, and then there's also like audio translation for the hard to hear as well. So like there are more new options that are coming out, but it's still not. I don't know. It's still not thoroughly enough. I mean, there's still plenty of things that I think we all could do as marketers. That I think the technology platforms like the FBs and the Google are already doing for us, but we don't take fully any advantage on those pieces in general. So yeah, I think it's an interesting piece that needs to be applied not only onto your videos or really not only on your videos, because actually that's probably the easiest route is to CC videos, right, and make it more accessible. But like web pages and all your white papers and quite frankly even your emails, they're not really that accessible. Like it's pretty much you're kind of screwed if you can't really have, if you're visually impaired, what are you going to do on it, right? Like, so I think that's a big piece that is really overlooked. What about you, man? What are your thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I actually didn't even think about, the visually impaired and with emails and everything like that. That's very true. It's not really taken that much into consideration. Yeah. Most of the things that we do as marketers it's visual,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's video, audio, and and the written word in a way, and obviously the images that go along with that. But yeah, like audio, at least there's clarity on what you do, right? Like if you're hard of hearing or something, that's where the captions come in. But yeah, what do you do for the complete vision, whatever visually impaired elements here? And there's actually ways to help yourself as marketers even pitch to anyone that is in your sphere of influence, whether it's your local business group that you're networking in, or quite frankly your whole email list of a majority of, I don't know, however many people you have on your email list that you keep trying to discuss different topics and marketing programs that you have to offer. There's ways that you can be helping them, and actually quite frankly helping yourself too. So it's kind of a win-win-win in a way, because the disabled people that are going to be having an issue like looking at this visually are going to find other routes to consume your content. So that's great. That's one win right there. Second, your clients, who quite frankly probably have not done much on this, or even thought about it in a way, will definitely appreciate that they are now accessible to a larger sphere of people, but then also that they can quite frankly get kind of kickbacks or credit for the government, from the government, which is actually kind of every year. It's not even a one-time deal. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that particular piece, because who doesn't like free money in a way? But this one makes sense because we all want to have a little bit more of an inclusive society, and it does actually benefit marketers who are open to being more inclusive to every single type of element that might be consuming your content that's out there.
Right, and you're just opening a much better field of people to consume your content.
Right. Plus, so here's the third one, right? The third one is actually, it is beneficial for us marketers because it's definitely some kind, it is a differentiator, because most people aren't talking about this. And if you get yourself as marketers approved correctly, and there is specific forms, and how anything government related and being certified or specifically approved onto some sort of vendor list or whatever, it does take a little bit of time. But with that particular piece, it's something that you can actually charge your clients almost yearly. Well, there's no almost, yearly, because they are now getting 5K back every year. So that's like free money that you can utilize for marketing, as long as it's only for marketing. That is just a huge win for us marketers. So might as well take that kind of win-win-win and run with it and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, so let's talk about it a little bit. So you said 5K.
Yeah. So there's different elements here that the IRS will do for your for your end user, for for the business that actually does take care of anyone with a disability, right? So I'm going to go into, before I go into the money, which I think is everyone obviously most interested about, because why not? I'm going to go into like the ADA side of things, right? Like the American Disability Act element here, because it's interesting, because a lot of web developers, like front end graphic design guys, do have this particular component, at least in their field of studies in a way. Like when they're going through and like learning about user experience on your website, it's actually a part that people do have to consider, but again, just completely gets overlooked, right? So that's one piece. And actually it's funny, because if you think about it from this particular piece, for SEO purposes, marketing purposes, right? Like on the bottom of any website that is managed by a marketer that knows anything that what they're doing, they usually kind of keep a sitemap of the website, and again, from an SEO side of things, Google doesn't really care about that sitemap as much. So I see, and I'm hearing a lot of marketers basically saying that, well, it's not needed to put that sitemap up there, completely overlooking the one reason why that sitemap actually does benefit your end user, which again, it's just kind of an interesting concept, right? Like basically a sitemap doesn't have pictures, right? It's literally a link by link by link of like however many pages your website has. Like let's just say it's 30 pages. It's an easy way to click on each one of those links, see all of the text all in one go, and print it out or have in any other format that might be beneficial for anyone with a disability. So I think misnomer number one that all marketers, especially anyone that's kind of specifically ties into SEO, who now says that, oh, you don't need that sitemap anymore. And they're trying to think that that makes sense, mainly because they want to stay in touch with the times and show that there's relevancy to their skill set of knowing SEO. And, typically, how does that look? Most of these marketers are like saying, all right, client X, like, yeah, it looks like you have that sitemap here. You're doing old style SEO. Let us do it instead, and we'll make it better for you, right? So that it's just we're all fighting for the same contracts, right? And I think the biggest thing that you got to look at is like, that's not true. You should have the sitemap there, not for SEO purposes, but quite frankly, because it's easier for printing out any form or fashion, for anyone that needs to, review your literature, review your content in that format. They now have that ease of accessibility to get to. And that's one component here. That's like the basic minimum. You don't need us to do that for you, but any end user, any business should be having at least that just to make it easy. So that's one there that I thought was an interesting component. I sat there and like pondered on it, and I was like, yeah, because I'm kind of, me specifically have also thought about like, well, yeah, you don't need the sitemaps anymore. You can literally go to Google Search Console now and submit an XML format of your sitemap, which makes sense from a SEO perspective. But if you do that and you remove it from the footer, you're also alienating people. So keep both. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. If anyone ever says it's old, you have a reason to have it there. And when I'm saying old, it's because, again, newer SEO tactics makes it not matter as much. That doesn't matter. The sitemap should have another purpose, and this is definitely the right purpose. So that's number one there. It's like lesson number one, I think, for all of us marketers that try to pretend, or maybe not even pretend, like we know what we're talking about, but we are specifically, telling our clients, like, you don't need that sitemap anymore. I say we stop that now, and we actually take the sitemap away from the SEO bucket and put it back towards ease of use bucket, which makes it beneficial for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's one way that you could do this, and that's not going to get you the full credit, though. By the way, I can't tell you if the IRS or anyone's actually double checking all of this. I'm obviously not trying to condone not doing it. Like, you should definitely do everything you do, everything you can do to get this particular credit. But I don't think you should just do the minimum, right? Like, so just that sitemap might not be enough, in my opinion, to worthwhile, like to have enough of a worthwhile to, help the Americans that have that disability, and quite frankly, anywhere in the world. It is online, so it doesn't have to be only ADA oriented, but the U.S. government does give you that, kickback if you do it correctly. So the second part is an element that I think a lot of people will just not get, right? And it goes into a little bit of funneling in a way. But I think it makes a lot of sense, and, hear me out in a way, right? Like the idea is you might not actually have, an end user, or let's just consider it an e-commerce product. So there's an end user that wants to, try out your supplement or your product in general. And, they go to the sitemap, they go and try to print it out. They can see all the text there. That's great, but that's still not beneficial for them, right? So one other way that you can do to collect an email address, which is actually kind of huge, is any way that you can do legitimizing collections of emails for purposes that actually matter, and this definitely sounds like one, you should definitely take advantage of. And in this case, it's actually a pretty straightforward landing page, right? You're gonna have on the footer of your website that you have copies of all of your content in Braille, which you probably don't have copies of all your content in Braille, but there's really quick and down and dirty services that actually will do that for you. And best part of this is you're getting credit back. You're getting actual money back from the government for this expense that you might incur to get your material at least transcribed in Braille, so you have it in one format, and then you can go to your local printer and always have it accessible. So you don't have to keep that always available or stockpile all this content for that's in Braille in a way here. But you should at least have the templates down. And as anyone actually fills out that form saying, yes, we're interested in having it in Braille, you can mail it to them. And I mean, just think about it from a, serving people well, right, Andres? Like, it almost makes sense, right? Like that person, if you go through that effort of mailing about your product or your service in Braille to someone that needs that particular type of content, to really review and understand your product or your service, like, they're probably going to trust you fairly quickly. I mean, it's just something that you don't think about, right? You don't do. So I think that helps build a lot of goodwill and a lot of trust right away. And it's actually not that difficult to do. Again, you just probably have to have it done once.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's a component there.
Okay. And yeah, and I think it's one of those things that, going that extra mile. And I think right now we're all at a point where that's kind of where marketing is at. Like, you need to be able to go to the extra mile to win that person over, because it's a lot less trust in companies overall, just because of, how society is right now. If you're able to get that trust that way,
why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, if you show that you are doing this for being inclusive, it actually does build trust for anyone that doesn't even need it too. So, I mean, again, they might not want to go download that particular version or have it mailed to them, but just seeing it on their footer, if there's someone that's studious and, actually very well researched, and before they make a decision, they think about it like 3 or 4 times. I'm definitely one of them. I'm trying to cut back on all my impromptus. That's one piece, at least in my opinion, that does show that you at least care. So why not? I mean, that's the pro. It's a benefit of it, and I'm not trying to only make it about that, but it is definitely a key takeaway for anyone's marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And then the ADA has a whole element for standards on accessible design. Like, it's crazy the amount of information. You got like screen quality, print quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and some of that's something that you can't really kind of control in a way, right? Like, I mean, screen quality sounds like it's definitely something that has to do with that particular person who needs to be viewing your content in that format. It's definitely on them a little bit more, but just some really common sense pieces on that, Andres, would be like, don't use tiny freaking fonts that the person has to zoom in. Like, I'm not saying make it like ridiculously large either, but some people do choose like the smaller typefaces because it looks better, or it's more modern or simpler, or looks less, I don't know, filling on a page. You know what I mean? and it's not necessary, right? Like you can get those benefits, or the, actually get a little bit of the ADA standards for accessible design covered by that piece. And that's definitely the gold standard. I mean, everything that has to do with this particular tax credit does have to do with the ADA. So if you have a clear understanding of ADA, you're going to have a leg up to make sure that you do get full benefit of this particular credit yearly, which is the key component here. As long as you're in business, you can get this back every year. So don't consider it a 5K. I mean, I honestly think it's got to be looked at from a, residual perspective, and that makes this really worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, there's a lot of things in there that I think you only have to do once. You know,
just have it on file. Be ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, how often are you changing the text on your whole website? You might have to redo a couple pages, but
right. You might have to redo a couple pages. You might, have to come up with some new infographics that, might have small text on it. So you might have to come up with a different design for some certain pages as well. But, again, it's just a one-timer component here. I think if you're going to do it completely accurately, though, and again, you don't have to do this for every piece of content, but definitely you'd want to take advantage. I think even just for engagement purposes, nothing even to do with ADA, but just because no one has their audio on Facebook, at least, or IG. They do on YouTube, but that's because their purpose on YouTube is to listen and watch that. So it makes sense. But like for FB and IG, how many times do you actually play audio? I mean, it's
Right.
barely touched.
I mean, I know because I used to do presentations and stuff on this. At least 2 or 3 years ago, at least 80% of the Facebook videos were not watched with sound, and I'm sure that's only gone up since then. So
totally agree. Yeah, so it covers it that way. I know that means that it could be a lot, but quite frankly, it's easily maintained on Facebook if you just have FB even manage your AI of, like literally transcribing it and then spending that little bit of extra time to make sure that those transcriptions are accurate, those captions are accurate, makes sense, right? Like you don't want to have obviously jumble there. So it does take some time to actually review line by line each piece, but you can claim all that time as a credit right here. So another benefit here that I think really needs to be at least thought about from a marketing perspective, from an end user as a business perspective, and just from a fairness perspective as well. So what else do we want to hit? I can go into like the fun part of this. I can go into like the nitty gritty here, and Andres, just to be really upfront, I'm actually going to go and want to spend a little bit of time. We're both here locally in Rockville, so I want to find a solid CPA to help validate everything that I have found here, because again, it's not really something that I would say many accountants would even know about. It's one of those, you got to spend the time to find it type of thing. But it's, just to be, we're giving all this information out. We're happy to help in any way. But the form is Form 8826. That's the IRS form here. It's actually not a long one, which is, I guess that's a benefit. It's not that bad. But I'll share my screen just to kind of pull it up and show what it looks like here. So yeah, I'll pull it up here just so you can kind of see what it looks like. It looks like this component right here. It's Form 8826. It hasn't been revised by the IRS since 2017, but that's more on them than us. But yeah, so here, it's a 2-page form. So it won't require much to do. You attach it right to your tax return. So you attach it right when you're doing your business filings, and great benefit for all of us. The IRS did extend it, so might as well try to get it in even for last year by getting it started. I mean, even at least just having this particular conversation going, right? So you can try to get this all in play makes sense. So if you're going to be talking to your accountant anyway, bring up this form and go about it that way. Now, one of the one pieces that I did spend some time researching on, and this is the website here, it's ada.gov taxcred.html. It will show you how to get the form 8826. But one of the pieces are that you actually do have to get it validated. So it means that businesses in general cannot just go do this on their own, right? Like you do need to work with an organization that has gotten that validation through ADA. So as us as marketers, like there's a format that we have to have that we would submit to your CPA to essentially confirm that this is done, right? Like we can be, that particular element here to make sure that you are getting this credit correctly, because we're filling out that particular form, we're signing off on it. And again, that goes back into the consideration that, again, the IRS is not going to go check your website. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to be just submitting this 8826 by itself, right? Like, and I'm not going to sit here and give tax advice or anything of that nature, but if you do go through the specific instructions here, especially on record keeping, how much time you got preparing and sending the form to to the IRS, which is actually more accountant oriented, but record keeping, learning about the law and the form, like all the definitions of how to actually utilize this, you'll see that there's a member of a control group or business under a common control. So you do need to have marketers that are specifically understanding this component to do it. And that's where we can come in. I literally made sure to spend the right time to understand this piece, to get the right form that we can submit to your accountant to have. And that will be, I'd say, your insurance policy, because again, it doesn't say specifically here on 8826 that you would need to have any other validation submitted with here. It's really just like any other tax form. It's really all about the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't want to, get yourself into any issue for something as simple as this in a way. So yeah, just get yourself accredited, get yourself through having that validations done, get that one pager from us, making sure that we double check, and quite frankly, we also would help make sure that those components are in play and make sure you have that copy of the Braille or whatever else. Those are components there that you would want to just have on file, right? Like, again, just because it's just the right thing to do. So I'm not going to express that any more in detail here, but I just don't want this to be some sort of free way of getting money out there. Like it's got to be taken seriously. It makes sense that the government is allotting this credit for us, and I don't want anyone to be taking it for granted. And I think any other web developer, marketer that's out there that goes through whatever they need to do on ADA, which I'm happy to share with them specifically, we can have that conversation. But you want to make sure that that is, kind of been spent the time on. So you do get, all your, T's crossed and your I's dotted here.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that, more people really need to know about, because like you said, it really doesn't, it seems to be pretty straightforward. And I mean, it benefits the business, benefits society overall, and it benefits the marketers. So
yeah. Keep it as a separate service, marketers. Like seriously, like this might be a nice bolt-on for your particular organization. You don't want to tie this into your agency, and I'll tell you why. Like, main reason would be, what if you decide to cut ties with that client of yours, or quite frankly, the other way around. The client wants to, feels like you're whatever reason you're just not feeling. They have to cut their costs, and marketers are typically one of the ones to get cut first, right? Keep this as a separate item that, quite frankly, is autonomous, right? Like you don't need to be synonymous of marketing with agency orientation only, right? Like all you got to do is make sure that every year you have the right reminders in place as a marketer or as an agency, right? To get that particular form out to your business. So it's kind of, I'd say, tie it in with when 1099s or W2s are being submitted, right? Like you would make sure that this particular form 8826, which needs validation. So the validation form, the paperwork that needs to happen to make sure that your business or your client is eligible, has everything they need to fill out this form, because you as a marketer are not filling this out, right? Like this is done by the accountant in a way. You just want to make sure that your accountant has all of the details needed to take, advantage of this credit. So receipts that go along with it, the accreditation piece, confirming that it has all been done, everything all in one place. Submit that all to your business that you're working with, and basically set it up as a set it and forget it. Like you don't need to have a call with your client on this particular piece. Like just make it like clockwork and charge them like clockwork too. Like it just needs to be a yearly fee that you could specifically work with here. Some of the other, some of the gurus out there that have maybe even attached a little component of understanding this. There are a couple of these guys out here that have picked up on this and saw that, this is a way that an agency can actually say, look, you work with us, we'll include this component in and give you 5K back every year. So that's another way, like you're bundling it with your agency service. So you don't want to completely just alien this particular piece. Either you make it a completely separate product or SKU or a line item for your agency to manage, and you just do a set it and forget it. You're not calling your client to talk about it. You're just doing the work and sending them the form at the end of the year for their next year's taxes, or for, before tax season starts. Or you are actually playing on the element that you're able to get them 5K back every year and keep that 5K in the marketing budget. Because again, like I said a second ago, like, man, we're always like one of the first to feel the pinch with any business, right? Like and it's the most hilarious component. But yeah, like, you could take this 5K and say, look, we'll give this back to you like clockwork to be used for Google ads or Facebook ads, and tie in the ADA compliance to the captions that go along with obviously the website piece that you'll want to do the first year. But again, that doesn't have to consistently change unless you keep changing your website. So that's the two routes that I would do if I was a marketer for whatever local business or national business. It doesn't matter. I would specifically do it these two routes. Either bundle it and tie it in where you're saying that you're giving 5K back for marketing purposes to either pay to Google or Facebook or printing or whatever it may be, or just keep it a completely separate line item that when, and this is something you always got to think about when this happens, where the client, needs to put you on pause or needs to end a relationship. When you're ending that relationship, tell them like, sure, you know what, we're not going to keep our agency element with you. That's fine. But we'll keep that ADA piece because that's still 5K that can come into you every year. So those are the two, my suggestions on how to run with these two pieces here. If you're a marketer that's trying to take advantage of making sure that, your sphere of influence knows about this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a business, like you said, that's just 5K a year that you really don't, you just put your agency to work on that, and you don't really have to do much on that.
Exactly. You don't need to have meetings on it. You don't have to have any kind of conversation. Just get the work done. And there's a lot of different ways to do that on the fly or on the cheap. Like we can, wrap this particular component up and add those into the disclaimers here or into the description itself. But, there's like tools that like literally cost a couple cents per article, right? Temi is one of them, that will help you get this particular component done. I mean, and basically the idea here would be having a transcript done of your entire website and then keeping that sitemap there. Like at the very least, that is a component here that I think helps. And I'm just going to read this particular component out one more time, just so everyone's clear on it. It's basically the tax credit is available to businesses that have total revenues of $1 million or less in the previous tax year, 30 or fewer full-time employees. So they're kind of hitting it both ways there. I think that's kind of interesting, because like you might be making way more than over $1 million and have less overhead, less employees. So you can actually get rid of that $1 million or less component, especially if you're not really running with a lot of capital or a lot of workforce here, right? So, and this credit can cover 50% of the eligible access expenditures in a year up to 10K. So the maximum, again, because it's 50%, would be that 5,000. So that's where this 5,000 comes in. The tax credit can be used to offset the cost of undertaking any barrier removals and alterations to improve accessibility, provide accessibility formats such as Braille, large print, audio tape, and actually, I didn't realize this until I read this again, but making, sign language interpreting part of your video components as well. Even if they're just like videos that are on your website, you might not want to be able to do that for every single video you're going to put out there online. But at least for the website ones that, are legacy, always going to be on your website, like videos explaining your product or your service, maybe consider having that, a sign interpretation done of it too. So yeah, all those can be added on here, which is, I mean, that's huge. The tax deduction is available to all businesses with a maximum deduction of $15,000 per year, and can be claimed for expenses incurred. That part there, that's the part, Andres, I'm saying that I might need an accountant to make sure I understand, because I don't understand where it says up 15K per year, maximum deduction of 15K. But we'll try to get some more clarification on that and let people know.
Right.
That particular piece, because they like to make everything more difficult than it needs to be.
And since we're talking about accountants and everything like that, is this something that you think you might need to just have a quick talk with your lawyer about, or do you think it's just an accountant thing?
I'd say this is completely an accountant thing, and I'll tell you why, because we did spend the time on the research on this, on making sure that this is a service that we can offer, because we want to be ADA compliant ourselves. So we've talked that particular part out. I've also double checked with a couple other elements that have brought this component up, that at least put this on my radar to go check on. And specifically texted them. One of them's a very well-known marketer. His name is Josh Harris, and shout out to him for even bringing this up to the to the forefront. But all the validation that we've done our checking on shows that you don't need to go speak with an attorney on. It's really that you have to have a clear understanding of your accounting for it, though. So I'd say if you are a skeptic, by all means go talk to an attorney, because I'm not going to say take my word for it. But this is definitely more of an accounting element, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yep. So yeah, and definitely something, again, that we just never think about. I mean, crazy. It does make sense.
And it needs to be brought up more, because it would really help society if we were able to get all this done, if every company just kind of, if this was an afterthought for most companies, I think that's kind of what we want to get to eventually.
Exactly. Yeah. Inclusiveness there makes a lot of sense. But also, like, you could, like I said, we could do an email submission for the Braille. I mean, let's just say you do want to actually put out on your website or on your social that you have people ready to explain, right? Like, not to sell you, but to explain what it is that you do. And you be kind of brutally upfront with them. And I truly think that that's the best kind of marketing, saying like, no, these aren't salespeople, right? Like, they're here to just talk it out. That in my opinion is still ADA compliant, right? Like, I mean, that again takes care of adding accessibility, and you just gotta be true to your word. You don't want to sell them at the end of it, but if you want to sit there and, quite frankly, have someone on your team read through all their content, if they are going to spend that time on that with you, and again, you can say it in a way where it's ADA oriented, or that it's just a value add of working with you. Like, you're not here to make it a hard sell. As funny as it is, me as a specific buyer of products and services online would actually take that into consideration and do it, right? Like, just because I would like to hear it from that particular component. The biggest difficulty, in my opinion, that I think is more of a psychological thing, is that most people would think that that means still a salesperson. So maybe even having a sample recording of what a conversation would look like, just because it just makes you as a business look better, right? So this are all the marketing pieces more than the ADA pieces, but take advantage in the right ways, and I think all of us do benefit out of it. So I'm not trying to discount that particular component. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
I think that's kind of it. Everything we wanted to touch on today.
Yeah. I think that kind of covers everything. At least for this particular piece, man. It's it does show that at least maybe there is hope for for the small businesses to get some sort of credit from the government here, right? Why not?
Right. Yeah. As much as we can get.
Yeah, take what you can. I mean, it is important to understand these particular pieces and confirm that there's a better purpose for all of them, and I can see that this one truly should be an element that everyone does take advantage of. Yeah. Well, cheers to that, man. You can't really say more than that.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Okay. Well, if you guys have any more topics that you guys want us to talk about, do any research on, let us know in the comments. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Have a good one.